first thought, a diary might spark the memory of a little black journal where you can let all your thoughts go scrambling across the page. You wouldn't be wrong, not completely. Within stories, however, they are far more complicated than just being a vessel for a character's troubles. Diaries are the perfect paradox. They give a character a breath, a life, an inner mind to send spilling across those pages as they make sense of the made-up world around them. They're intimate. A diary draws the narrator and the audience almost close enough to melt into one another. You can let characters like Laura Palmer practically whisper into your ear as she details the deepest parts of her mind, turning you into the only witness of Laura's true identity, something that she hasn't let out for anyone else. This closeness, and the manipulation that comes with it, isn't just limited to Laura, however. I first fell in love with this narrative device with Arthur Morgan, actually, and his very thoughtful habit of recording even his tiniest experiences. Most recently, I read this really interesting book that plays with the concept of a diary, a story within a story, even more. Firstly, diaries are incredibly intimate, story-wise. The protagonist and the narrator are combined into one person, and said person metaphorically sits you down and explains the events to you almost anecdotally. The whole time you read it, you are always subtly aware of the multiple degrees of fiction that it is, too. It's not just a book, or a video game, or whatever, but it's a story within that. Because of this, it could possibly count as metafiction, which is when a piece of fiction breaks the fourth wall by acknowledging that barrier between reality and the story within it, when a story is self-aware that it's fiction. A really famous example would be Fleabag, or A Series of Unfortunate Events, but I think the best example of this, diary-wise, would be a book I read recently, A Tale for the Time Being, written by Ruth Ozeki. It's a really interesting book, and has very quickly turned into one of my all-time favorites, but the main premise is that it's a book told from two perspectives. One, from a woman named Ruth who finds a diary washed up on the Canadian shore, coming all the way from Japan, and two, from the girl who wrote the diary, a teenaged Now. There's a lot of talk about time, and we'll get into that, but there's also a lot of fourth wall breaks, where Now points out that someone is reading her words. You and Ruth both form a parasocial sort of relationship with her over the course of the book. I think those types of bonds between the audience and the narrator are really common when you read a diary, and it's because of this intimacy. Laura Palmer's diary, technically The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, written by Jennifer Lynch, is another good example of this. The diary goes through the last 5 years of her life, from her 12th birthday leading up to the dates before she died. This is also the best opportunity for you to learn as much as possible about Laura Palmer, parts that she felt she couldn't show anybody else. She is also a very beloved character, and this book only adds to that. Both Ruth and Now, and their one-sided friendship, are fictional, but the way people, including me, feel about Laura Palmer goes a little beyond that. Her story is told incredibly earnestly, both in Twin Peaks and her diary, which only fosters this connection to her more. Interestingly, though, diaries are also the best medium I can think of to take advantage of this kind of bond. Most story narrators pretend, in a way, that they are not just words on a page, or a disembodied voice in a movie, or whatever else, and cut to the chase of explaining the events to you. Diaries are more blunt, and yet at the same time, they're more dishonest. Everyone keeps a diary for a reason. Now, in A Tale for the Time Being, writes hers because she wants to make a biography of cool adventures her great-grandmother, a feminist Buddhist monk, has gone through, even though she gets a little sidetracked in this quest. Laura keeps hers to funnel her emotions and experiences, as complex and dark as they may be, somewhere, since she feels all that pressure to keep them secret from her loved ones. More practically, though, is my final example. Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2 also keeps a diary. It's one of my favorite little details from the game, actually. Clear intention from it is to basically record his memories and all that he sees throughout his life, from the flora and fauna to the peculiar strangers he meets, to the increasing tensions in his life within a gang. But all three of these characters are biased in their writing, which leaks into their tone. Now is conversational and often cynical in her diary, but Laura is very reflective and really apologetic and guilty. Arthur is thoughtful, but keeps many of his observations on the more objective side. However, that's not true for all diaries. I think it's actually more like the opposite. More often than not, the way diaries tell their stories in this direct and intimate way ends up with them being really manipulative, sometimes without even meaning to. Like I said already, everybody keeps a diary for a reason. My diaries are because I can't keep my mouth shut and I torture the paper instead of my poor friends and family with every single thought that pops into my mind. And you already know about Laura now and Arthur. These intentions don't just affect the tone, though. They also affect what we learn about these stories. If the owner of the diary doesn't want to dwell on something embarrassing or scary or boring, then they might not write about it. Or they could spend an excessive amount of time writing about something that they find really interesting, even if, to them, that's folding laundry. Laura Palmer hides from the audience Bob's identity for the whole diary until the very end. Even then, it's not explicitly told to us. She also tells us that her reactions to the trauma she suffered makes her a bad person. These are both lies in one way or another, but it's not like she's intentionally lying to the people reading her diary. Instead, she's lying to herself. Now, on the other hand, doesn't live in denial as much as she lives in ignorance. She's a couple years younger and definitely less perceptive. I'm not going to spoil anything because I really want you to read the book, but there are multiple times where more adult problems or details go over her head in a way. Ones you only catch if you're careful. All in all, the manipulation within diaries can come from two different motives, lying to the audience or lying to yourself. One of the main ways they do this, again, is by keeping the perspective isolated. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has a name for this little phenomenon, which she explains in a TED Talk. She calls them single stories. Well, she calls real-life examples of this single story, like when your parents scolded you as a kid for not finishing your dinner by telling you that starving children in poverty would happily eat your scraps. But we never really hear from said starving children in poverty, so it's kind of a one-sided argument. You know what they say about assumptions. I think the term still works for the sake of diaries, though. If the person writing the diary thinks someone is bad, they'll focus on all the bad things they do and skip over or gloss over the good parts, or vice versa. Being selective with your storytelling like this prevents the audience from fully understanding the entire context. Diaries are all about immersion, right? This is a side effect of that. Oftentimes it's unintentional, like with all three characters I'm talking about, but it could also be intentional. Like if you just want to sound really cool to the very inanimate object you're writing on. I've done that. It also only shows the stakes in the way that the narrator understands them. Laura Palmer and Bob are a great example of this. The bullying that Now goes through and her falling into escort work is another. The bullying is very intense and scary, and that bleeds into her diary pages. Being an escort is more sinister, which she doesn't really immediately notice or even realize that she's doing, and plays it down. Arthur Morgan and the Blackwater heist is another example. You start the game fleeing with your outlaw gang from a failed heist that they try in Blackwater, and Arthur wasn't personally there, so the stakes of the failure aren't fully obvious. In hindsight, though, it was the first sign of how inevitable the gang's end was. There's no way to stop it. There's no way to stop anything we read in these diaries, actually. We might be reading from it like we're right next to the character, sitting on their shoulder as they experience it all, but everything's already happened. I'm going to be honest here. I felt really, really dumb when writing the outline for this part of the script, but I'm a big girl, and I learned all about quantum physics and time physics and all of that just for you guys. But let's keep this short. Because of the way diaries work, in that constantly present, but in the past at the same time sort of way, there's a discussion in the physics field that comes quite close to this. Disclaimer, I am a humanities-centered person. The last time I took a physics class, I was 13, and we talked about the three states of matter and atoms. So if you know anything more about science, feel free to infodump it all and correct me in the comments. But this discussion is called the problem of time, which is basically the disconnect in the two main approaches to how time is perceived scientifically. The first way is quantum mechanics. Basically, if you're a quantum mechanics truther, that means you consider time to be completely objective and empirical. An hour is an hour, a day is a day, 5 p.m. is at 1700. It's also constantly moving forward and pushing us forward with it, like someone riding a train or a fish being pushed along by a river current. On the other hand, the second way is general relativity. This is definitely the more type B approach to time, since it acknowledges the idea that time technically changes based on each person's perception of it and their experience. Albert Einstein used the example of how, if someone were on a moving train, they would see lightning hit the ground just the teeniest bit sooner than someone standing at a train station. In other words, With general relativity, they view time more like a landscape that you can travel across and find the events that happen. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, but Jimmy Buffett doesn't have much to do with Diaries. Quantum mechanics and general relativity do. A Tale for the Time Being talks about this a lot. For example, now only exists when Ruth is actively reading the diary. When she isn't, now's story is in a sort of limbo. It's definitely more of a fantastical approach. There's a point, spoiler warning, skip ahead 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this, where now almost has her life come to an end and the entries stop. Ruth puts the book down, has a weird dream, and when she goes back to reading, suddenly there's more entries and now's life goes on. Another great example of this is Red Dead Redemption 2. Because it's a video game and an open world story game at that, you get to pick and choose when to take part in certain events. Until you approach the area where they start, the characters wait in a permanent limbo for your presence. The diary has infinite versions of itself because of this, based on what order you do what missions or if you don't do certain ones at all. Both of these are diaries within the perspective of general relativity. But can diaries also fit under quantum mechanics? Yes. Even if the time between all these events within Arthur's story varies, the start and end are fixed. The circumstances might change, but the events will happen. The lightning inevitably strikes. Or, in an example that might make a little more sense, Laura Palmer finding out Bob's identity does not suddenly change the fact that it was... Pause, because a friend of mine has found this channel and hasn't finished season 2 of Twin Peaks yet, so skip ahead. That it was Leland Palmer all along. It just broadens the perspective we get. Hindsight is not time travel. Unless it is. Like I said, I feel much more comfortable in humanities and stories, not physics and time, so I am going to happily flee back to my comfort zone now. Diaries are complicated. As simple as writing your feelings down might be in real life, they are complicated in stories. They are intimate, not entirely honest, and as we just saw, maybe the beginner's introduction to time travel. But diaries are still very, very interesting as a method to tell stories, or else we wouldn't be here. Even past that base interest, they're emotionally raw. The obvious answer is that diaries make you feel bonded to the narrator. It's no coincidence that I got very deeply attached to all 3 of these characters when I first found their stories, and now, however later it's been afterwards. I've been obsessed with Arthur Morgan since the game came out in 2018. That's 8 years. This attachment is from that intimacy and how close you are to the narrator when they tell you these stories, and also something else, the very jarring fact that you, the reader, are completely helpless to what happens in the story. You cannot save any of these characters. Laura Palmer will die. She's already dead. So is Arthur Morgan. And probably so is now. I don't know. You will see them when they still have hope for their future, and you will watch them experience the beauty and the horrors of being a living being, and you will still end up in the same spot, staring at that final page. Because what is the final page of a diary anyways, if not a tombstone of a story? Thank you for watching.